Now I'm going to show you how to make a chilled lemon souffle, which is a great dessert in the hot summer months, again, because it's cold, but also it has this lemony punch of flavor, but it's very light on the palate. All right, now to make these chilled lemon soufflés, you're gonna need some ramekins, or you could use a big souffle dish and make it family size. But I like the little ramekins because everyone gets their own. And if you noticed, I zhuzhed these up a bit with a little popped foil collar. That's because these set up in the fridge, not the oven. And so if you let them set with the collar on, you take the collar off before serving, and it looks like the souffle is risen above the rim. Totally fanciful, you don't need to do that. In fact, if you don't, you get an extra ramekin or two of souffle. So it's up to you, but I think it looks cool. All right, so setting those aside, we're gonna get into making a lemon pastry cream. So this dessert has three components. It has the lemon pastry cream, and then you lighten it with egg whites, and then you lighten it again with whipped cream, and that is what makes the souffle mixture. So here I have half a cup of fresh lemon juice, and I'm gonna thicken it with a packet of gelatin, because that's, of course, how it'll set up in the fridge. So just sprinkle the gelatin over the top. Now, over the years, we have recipes where you just sprinkle it over the top of the liquid and you let it sit there. I've found I love whisking it in, just hydrates more easily, because with gelatin, you want to hydrate it and then you want to melt it. So let this sit aside till it's nice and hydrated. All right, onto the pastry cream part. Okay, in a medium saucepan, we're going to add a cup of milk and half a cup of sugar. Whisk this together. We're going to heat this up on the stove top over medium-low heat. We just want that sugar to dissolve and the milk to get good and hot. That takes a few minutes. Okay, and while that is heating up, we're going to whisk the egg yolk. Now, pastry cream is traditionally thickened with a ton of egg yolks, but because this is a refrigerated dessert and we're going to rely on the gelatin to help let the souffle set, we just need a few for richness. So that's 2 yolks. We're going to whisk it together with 2 tablespoons of sugar and a little bit of cornstarch, just 1/4 teaspoon. That's just a little insurance that the pastry cream will set up. Now I'm calling it a pastry cream, and in reality it's not an actual pastry cream. It's going to be much looser than that, but it's similar to a pastry cream. All right, now I'm just going to sit here and whisk this until the milk is good and hot. All right, you can see what a difference a little whisking made. It's much lighter in color. It's grown a little bit in volume, and that's perfect. Time to check on the milk. All right, the milk is perfectly hot. You can see the steam and all that sugar has been dissolved. Now we're just going to temper the egg yolks by slowly adding the milk, just slowly bringing them up to temperature. If you dumped it all in and whisked it, it just might cook the egg yolks too fast. So you want to very slowly raise their temperature so they don't curdle. There we go. All right, back into the pot it goes. All right, back to the stove we go. Medium-low heat. All right, now we're going to cook this for about 4 minutes. We're looking for the consistency of this mixture to thicken up a bit. It looks like heavy cream. And most importantly, it's going to register 185 degrees on the instant read thermometer. This is the best way to tell when it's done. So I'm going to whisk it constantly, take its temperature every so often. All right, there we have it, 185 degrees. That is perfect. All right, now we're just gonna run it through a strainer. Get any bits of yolk that might have cooked while it was cooking on the stove. So you just don't want any texture of scrambled eggs in there. All right, I always love to see what the strainer catches. How good of a job did I do? That is a pretty clean strainer. That's an A+. Okay. Now is when we add the lemon flavoring. So here's 2½ teaspoons of grated lemon zest. And I grated that zest really finely using a rasp style grater, so it has a really delicate texture. And last but not least, this gelatin and the lemon juice. So this is all the lemon flavor. Goes in after you've cooked it while it's still warm. That dissolves the gelatin, but doesn't really cook out that bright lemon flavor. All right, so that is the egg yolk lemon juice mixture. Pastry cream, but not really a pastry cream. All right, and we want to super chill this before we fold in the whipped egg whites and the whipped cream. So I have a bowl of ice water here. We're just going to set this in the bowl, leave it out on the counter while we start whipping the egg whites. And now it's time to whisk the egg whites. So here I have 5 egg whites. Adding them right to a stand mixer just makes it easier. whisking by hand. I did once in culinary school. It took me forever to get soft peaks. Never gonna do that again. All right, now I'm just adding a pinch of cream of tartar. That just helps ensure that we get nice, tall whipped egg whites. And we're gonna use 2 speeds. I'm gonna start on medium, get them broken up, get them a little foamy, and then we're gonna crank it up to medium high and add a little bit of sugar. So starting on medium, takes about a minute. All right, you can see that those egg whites are getting a little foamy, and that's a good indication that it's time to crank it up to medium high. And now I'm gonna start to add 2 tablespoons of sugar, but I add the sugar slowly. Now we're just gonna continue to whip this until we get nice, soft, glossy peaks, and that can take a few minutes to a few more minutes depending on your mixer. Okay, time to take a look. Oh, you can see, even as I raise the head of the mixer, we are there. So let me take this off and show you. All right, so let me show you what I mean by a soft peak. Oh, that's perfect. You can see the peak really bent around, and that's good. So it makes a peak, but it's a soft peak. All right, also nice and glossy. Time to incorporate the whipped egg whites right into this lemony custard. So to start, I'm gonna take about 1/3 of the egg whites. I'm just gonna whisk them into this custardy base, just again to help lighten it up, help temper it before we fold in the remaining egg whites. Oh, that looks good. All right, now I'm gonna add the remaining egg whites. Now folding. The idea of folding is that you keep as much of the whipped lightened texture of the egg whites as possible as you mix it into the base. Over the years, I've folded a lot of different ways. Pretty particular on what spatula I like to use to fold because I like a big wide spatula. In culinary school, I watched my French chef use his arm. It was a big bat. He used his whole arm to fold, which kind of grossed me out. But what I like doing now is I like using a whisk to fold. So what I do, put the whisk down through the middle, come up the sides, and then let the mixtures fall together through the tines. I just think this is a really easy way to mix the two together without losing too much air in those whipped egg whites. All right, this is looking pretty good. A few streaks are okay because we still have to fold in the whipped cream. So I can finish folding in the rest of the streaky bits of the whipped egg whites when we fold in the whipped cream. Now to make the whipped cream, we're gonna use the same mixing bowl. It's okay, you don't need to wash it. And that's 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. Back onto the stand mixer it goes. Lock it in, medium high, again looking for soft peaks. All right, I'm seeing the whisk leave a few trails in the whipped cream. Time to check it. And actually, when it comes to whipping cream, I like to do the last little bit by hand because it can go over whipped so quickly. I actually just use the same beater and use my hand. Yep, there she goes. It happens so quickly. Plating it out, there's the peak, falls over, but holds itself sideways. That's good, that's a good soft peak. All right, now, I'm gonna gently fold in the whipped cream. Again, using a whisk to fold these ingredients together. Go down through the center, scrape up the side of the bowl, and then let everything fall through the tines. And then I'll spin the bowl with every whisk. Oh, that looks good and fluffy, and it smells so lemony. All right, give the bowl a quick scrape down. Make sure there's nothing on the edge or the bottom of the bowl that's not mixed in. Oh no, that looks perfect. All right, now into the ramekins, the mixture goes. To do this, I just use a big spoon and I take my time. And again, we're going right over the lip of the ramekins, into that foil collar, so that they'll look nice and tall when we serve them. Smooth the tops out just a bit. They don't need to be perfectly smooth, but I like them to look like they rose as a unit, you know, when I take off those foil collars. There we have it. Okay, these are ready for the fridge. I'm not gonna cover them in plastic wrap because obviously it would stick to the tops of the soufflés. And they need to stay in the fridge for at least an hour and a half to help them really set up. You can leave them in there for up to 6 hours, but much past that, they get a little too rubbery. So 1.5 to 6 hours is ideal. So these soufflés have set up nicely in the fridge and it's time to unmold them. So I'm gonna take off the foil collar And here I have the foil collar just attached with a little piece of tape. So peel it off. Oh, look at that. I know it's just a silly parlor trick to do those foil collars, but I just think it looks so cool. So it looks like I got a little excited when I was filling these, and there's a little schmutz on the outside of the ramekins. Easy to wipe off with a warm, damp towel before serving. All right, those look pretty good and clean. Now time to add a little bit of a garnish. They don't necessarily need it, but I always think it looks pretty. Today I'm going to use some raspberries. Blueberries also work, or blackberries, strawberries. Oh, 3 little in the middle. That rhymes. 3 little in the middle. Notice how I washed these berries. It's hard to wash raspberries without them turning to mush. And the trick is to fill a bowl of cold water, add the raspberries, bob them gently, then pull them out and let them sit on paper towels. That gets them clean and dry without letting them turn to mush, which is especially important if you're going to use them as garnish. All right, that looks good. Topped off with a little mint. In culinary school, we weren't allowed to do this on our platters. You weren't allowed to put, well, inedible garnish was the term. Like if you're not meant to eat it, it shouldn't be on the plate. And I agreed with that for many years until one day I realized how a little green really just looks good on food. So now I'm all in favor of a little garnish, especially little sprigs of mint on dessert. Plus, makes the room smell good. All right, there they are. Aren't those sweet looking? Great dessert for a hot summer day. Might as well taste one. Oh, you can see that texture. It's nice and firm. Oh, it is light as air and creamy, and then there's that nice lemon zing. It just kind of melts away in your mouth, leaving behind just sort of a sweet kiss of lemon. See you next time. Thanks for watching. What'd you think? Leave a comment below and let me know what you're excited to cook this week. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. You can get today's recipes and more for free at our website, americastestkitchen.com/JuliaAtHome.